I want to talk to you today about how I'm raising extremely cuddly chickens. This is my second year doing this, and the first year I got buff Orpingtons and I raised them from day old chicks into laying hens, and that batch is very cuddly. But this year I changed some of the ways that I raised my chicks, and this batch is turning out to be even cuddlier than the last. Though we are only 7 weeks into it, I want to talk about some of the things that I've done in case you're raising chicks and you're trying to increase their friendliness and cuddliness. So, the first thing is I followed the Feather Brain's advice, and she said try to get your chicks on hatch day or as close to hatch day as possible so you can potentially imprint on them. So I did do that and I did try to imprint on them. I have no idea if that worked, but I will say, comparing, contrasting, getting my chicks from the farm store last year and picking up my chicks on hatch day from a hatchery this year, the chicks from the farm store last year were way harder to soothe. They were upset a lot more often and they weren't really responsive quickly to any kind of soothing that I might give them. And the chicks this year that I got from the hatchery were very responsive to soothing. So when they were giving distress calls and I just vocally responded back, they completely relaxed. They were totally fine.
Mom, what's going on, ladies?
And that was a huge difference. Now, I don't think that if you can't get your chicks from the hatchery on hatch day that you can't bond or be cuddly with your chicks. My last year's batch of chickens is completely evidence that it's totally possible, but I do think that that did help me this round. The other thing that I did was last year I had a brooder that forced me to engage with my chickens from the top because it opened from the top. So it was constantly coming down at them from the top whenever I wanted to give them treats or feed them or do anything in their brooder. And this year, the tent that I had opened from the side, which I think gave them a lot more comfortability with me, and it didn't feel like there was constantly a threat coming down at them. I think that that's a very easy change you can make, is try to make it so that your brooder, you can enter in from the side. And the other thing is I tried to give them places around the entry point where I would put my hands in that allowed them to elevate themselves a bit. So a cement block or their heat plate that they could stand on. And that also gave them like a higher ground if they wanted it, so that they didn't feel super intimidated by me. I don't know if that helped, but that's what I tried to do. Now, brooder setup aside, let's talk about some of the things that I actually did with the chicks to make them friendly. And these are things that you don't have to spend a ton of time on this, but once a day even, I think, can make a difference. And that is, when I first got them, I didn't hand feed them, but I did leave my hands in the brooder, trying to get them comfortable with my hands. So I just wanted them to get comfortable seeing my hands, being around my hands, being close to my hands. I really tried to fight the urge to try to pick them up or pet them. Sometimes that didn't always work, but I just wanted them to know that my hands were not a threat. And that's how I spent the first couple of days. And I think that I saw a lot of response to that. After I knew that the chicks were very comfortable with where their feed was and that they knew where it was and they were eating fine, I started hand feeding them their feed in that first week after a couple of days. And that's where I started seeing the biggest jump in cuddles. That's where chicks started to step on my hands. That's where chicks started to get more comfortable with me raising my hand and them perching on my hand.
Okay.
And that is one of the things that I think made a huge, huge difference. I think if you can do anything, hand feeding your chicks or chickens every single day for a couple of minutes, it doesn't have to be, and it shouldn't be all of their food, but just a little like loving moment of like, here, I'm feeding you this feed with love, I think can make a really big difference. I found that also really helped the chickens associate my hands with good things. And then at about week 2, I want to say, I started to introduce chick grit and soldier fly larvae as treats. Now, when you do this, make sure you crush up the soldier fly larva. The soldier fly larva you'll see me use in a lot of my videos, I'm not actually a fan of. It came really burnt and was difficult to crush up for them, and they didn't seem to like most of the soldier flies because they just seemed burnt and like not to their preference. But I gave them soldier fly larvae as treats, so now anytime they stepped on my hand or they jumped up onto me or anything like that, I would make sure that I would give them the soldier fly larvae as a treat. And they didn't really know what to do with the treat at first. It took a while for them to get used to it, but then once they figured out what the treat was, what the soldier fly larva was, I could not keep a lot of the chicks off of me. They were constantly jumping onto me for treats, and that is what I want. I will say, having raised my cuddly chicks, some people just have chickens that are really, really comfortable with being pet or like having your hands around them, and you know, you can do that. Just leave your hands in the brooder, hand feed them. I raise my chickens and chicks to jump onto me, cuddle me. Don't do that if you don't want your chickens doing that to you. Sometimes it can be a little overwhelming when you have 3 chicks jumping onto you, but I find it really rewarding and cute. And I don't know, I like it. So every time they jump onto me, give them treats. I want them to learn that like being on me, being with me is safe, happy. They get a lot of treats if they do that. It's all good things. And I also, some of the ones that are still more skittish, I'll just give them treats out of my hand. I'll make it a point to make sure that they're all getting treats. And that's how I've been raising super cuddly chicks. I'd love to know any tips that you've heard. And all of that said, this is Midwest Chickens. I will see you in the next video.